Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, I'll be featuring the case of Michael Alig. He is best known for, well, the Club Kids. So I'm excited to talk about this episode, and I figured I'd get a little dressed up, a little flashier for this episode. It kind of only seemed fitting. So, before I dive into it, I have to say, when I did the post that I was going to be covering this case, I got quite a few messages about it, which I wasn't expecting. Some people who were very familiar with the case, or some people that really weren't, but just were very excited for it because they didn't know it. So, I hope I live up to the expectations that everybody has. But before we dive into that, let's see who is here. Hey, Manson Archives. Hey, Robin Owens, Kane, James Russell, Mr. Jinx, the Better Paul. Hello. Uh, let's see. Chris James. Hello. Tony L. Capone, Firefly, Corey Novak. Hello. Stop bragging that you're in Las Vegas. I'm so jealous. I've not been to Vegas since I think like 2016, and I really could go back. I'm sure things are much, much different than they were back then, but so jealous that you're there. What is this? You look like you should be on the late 70s TV show Buck Rogers. I don't know that show. I wasn't born till the 80s, so sorry, James. I don't get your reference, but that's totally fine because I'm sure somebody in the chat will get your reference and play along with your humor, if you will. Everything in Vegas is expensive. Now, it was expensive then. I can't even, what do you mean now? But Mr. Beckham, the renowned traveler that he is, he has said the same thing too, because he goes to Vegas frequently. And yeah, he had said it's just getting outrageous. It's just more. So that's not surprising. Then again, I don't quite know what Mr. Beckham does when he goes to Vegas, nor do I want to know. So before I jump into tonight's episode, I'm just curious for you guys in the chat. Have you guys heard about this case? Have you not? Manson Archives, me and him, we've chatted most of the day. I know you know the case, hon. This question is not geared at you. But everybody else, I'm just curious if you guys have heard of this case or not. I didn't know a lot about it, I'm not going to lie. And then it came up on the list, and here we are. So, yes. Let's see. Things have changed in Vegas. They now have a. Oh, you are such a hater of the Boston. Such a hater. All right. Thank you, the Better Paul. Don't know this case. Okay. That is good to know. Know this case. I saw the movie. That's it. All right. This is the one Macaulay Culkin, isn't it? I did not watch any movies related to this. I tend to stay away from things like that when I do research for cases because just like Netflix shows and on stuff like this, things are always twisted. So I avoid it like the plague. So I can't answer to that. Thank you, Manson Archives. The movie's fictional, just as I suspected. And I think you guys actually talked a little bit about that earlier in the chat before the show started. Let's see. Yes, Manson Archive said, Robin, it's also fictional if you're talking about the Seth Green and Macaulay Culkin movie. Thank you. Let's see. Yes, okay. All right, so you guys are at least familiar with that movie, which that one I have not seen. Danny, you look like you could disco on ice. Am I really like rocking a 70s theme right now? Because Michael's known for like the 90s club kids. So I just thought like the sparkles and the light, I thought this was perfect and a little bit more flashy than I typically do. So I thought this was perfect. But if I nailed the wrong decade, then my bad. And I also typically don't do my hair like this for the show, so I know that's very different as well. Ice capades. Oh God, you guys, don't never give me a break, but you know what? You call it like it is. So that's why I appreciate you guys so much. Let's see. Oh my God, James. In that case, I know everything about this case. Corey, last time you knew everything or a lot about a case. Yeah, we've spoken about that. We've spoken about that. That the case that Corey knew was the Drexel case. That was the case that he knew quite a bit about. I didn't realize. But yeah, he knew a lot about that area. So, which was very cool. Had I known in advance, that's the thing with these. I'll post, like me and Manson Archives were talking about this earlier. I'll post something about, oh, I'm going to cover this case. And then someone will be like, oh my gosh, I know a lot about this, or I have a lot of insight, and here's how. And I'm like, oh, dang it. I wish I knew before, because this would have been a great type of thing to, either do a collab or to kind of pick you guys' brain who really, really know this case far more than I can get just through like online research. So that's always a bummer when I hear about that after the fact, but it is what it is. Actually, did this guy die a few weeks ago? No, you have the wrong case, hon. You very much have the wrong case. Disco Gal. Okay. So if we're going for a 70s vibe, apparently I'm rocking it. 90s Club Kid, not so much, apparently. Not so much, but that's okay. That's okay. What is this? You look like, I'm not even going to butcher that last name. You look like Chloe, whom hung out with the club kids, but Michael hated her. You know what? That sounds about the way I interact with most people. So spot on, in my opinion. All right. I'm just here for the Recency Homer Russell. Oh, love you. You need better lighting, 70s, Danny. I have a ring light, like shining right down. So, and I have overhead lighting. I don't know what to tell you. I have other lights that I could kind of put onto my laptop, but I think that would make me a little too bright. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll play around with it for the next True Crime and Chill. How about that? I think that'd be the better place to play with the lighting. So, all right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Look at this. In this case, I know nothing about, and that's how I like it. All right, you guys. Michael Alig, also known for the Club Kids. So let's go ahead and find out more. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Michael Alig was born on April 29th, 1966 in South Bend, Indiana. He is the second of two sons to John and Elkie. His parents divorced when he was only 4 years old. Growing up in a small town, he had few friends and felt out of place. He was also closeted about his sexuality. He had strong interests in fashion and art. This made him the object of constant bullying from fellow students. After graduating from Penn High School in 1984, he moved to New York that fall. Michael studied architecture before transferring to the Fashion Institute of Technology, a very prominent and well-known school, might I add. There, he met the boyfriend of artist Keith Haring, whom introduced Michael to the New York City nightlife. Michael became popular with the parties. They were known for elaborate costumes and breakthrough dance music. At first, Michael was very anti-drug, but that didn't last long. So clearly that changed, and he became well known for his extensive drug use. He was known to use several hard drugs at once. He and his party regulars became known as the Club Kids, and they became infamous for their flamboyant, I knew I was going to butcher a word, extravagant and selfish antics in the late 1980s through the early 1990s. And if you guys saw the post that I did on Instagram, there is, in the Instagram story, I used a different photo of Michael showing, again, one of his many outfits from back in the day. And then obviously for the thumbnail, I used a side-by-side one of him that was, I'll say, more recently, and we'll get to what that means later on. But then also one, again, showing kind of the flamboyant style that he would typically don as the Club Kids. So Now, before we continue on, let's just see if there's any little comments about this, just so I can keep up with you guys. Let's see. Oh, hey, Undercover Mermaid. Good to see you. Okay. But there's a little bit missing there. Okay. Please, 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 please. Let's see. Andy Warhol was killed and he worked his way up at the parties. He had his own club called LOTTO. So Lotto. Okay. Thank you, Manson Archives. Danny wants to rock and roll a night and party every day. Oh my goodness, y'all. Good band, by the way. Reviewed on Geraldo. Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, don't want to miss this one. Keith talked him into parties because Warhol was gone, and so was the factory. Thank you for that. William Eddy on location. Hello. Okay, so to continue on, so Michael aggressively promoted his own notoriety, occasionally performing public stunts. For example, moving a party to a late night donut shop and holding a traveling dance party in a shipping container that crossed Manhattan on the back of a truck. That's pretty freaking cool, I do have to say. That would be something I would have loved to have witnessed, but I'm just too young to have witnessed that. Sorry. So Michael would throw hundreds of dollar bills onto a dance floor just to watch people scramble for the money on their hands and knees. He would also be known for urinating onto a crowd of people or into someone's drink. Occasionally, he would execute a giant exaggerated pratfall, knocking partygoers to the ground in the process. Michael had learned from mentors, including James St. James. He was also influential in the early promotion of, and I'm totally going to butcher this, so my apologies, DJ Koki, which is spelled Keoki. Not even sure how to pronounce that, so I'm not even going to pretend. Genitalia, Freeze, Richie Rich, and many other Club Kid personalities. The Club Kids' outrageousness resulted in their appearing on the news and on television talk show circuits, much like, as Manson Archives had referenced, that they were interviewed on Geraldo. So let me just highlight that one more time. So thank you for that perfect timing. Let's see. Okay. Just to double check, that's why I said Madonna was the first. She was Keith's best friend. It was fun. James St. James. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Keoki. Thank you. I knew I was going to be horribly wrong on it. I was just wanting to make sure I had Michael's last name pronounced right. Not going to lie, I went through several documentaries just to make sure everybody was pronouncing it the same so I didn't mess that up because did not want to do that. Okay. No. All right, so let's see. Where did we leave off? Yes, so they were on the television talk show circuit. So Michael's most well-known parties were held at the Limelight. The Limelight was closed by the police for alleged drug trafficking, but it did reopen several times during the 1990s. Michael and his friend Robert Riggs, also known as Freeze, had allegedly murdered Angel Melendez over a long-standing drug debt. That is why we're making this a true crime case, in case you were wondering where this was going. Michael has stated that he was so high on drugs that the events of that night are cloudy. But what we know, Michael and Angel got into a fight, and Michael grabbed a pillow and tried to, quote, restrain, end quote, Angel. Then Michael and Freeze beat Angel with a hammer. Then they injected Drano into his veins. In addition, they poured detergent into his mouth and taped it with duct tape. This is what killed him. They then put Angel's body in the bathtub so the fluids could drain. A few days later, as decomposition began to set in, it started to smell, obviously. So Michael and Freeze dismembered Angel's body and put it in a cork-lined box. Michael later called his mother. He was crying hysterically, saying he should be dead and that he was going to kill himself. His mother, she just brushed off the phone call and brushed off what he had told her because Michael, at the time of this, was allegedly high on drugs. A couple of days later, Michael and Freeze put Angel's body in a cardboard box and threw it into the Hudson River. Now, before we continue on, let's just see where you guys are in the chat. Okay. Why the Limelight was closed. Michael had turned snitch to get a lesser deal. Thank you. I'm not quite there yet, but that is totally fine. Hey, Alexander, welcome. Good to see you. No, you're not late. I mean, a little bit, but that's fine. We're still going into this, so all good. Injecting Drano didn't happen. That's what I read, hon. But if there's a different narrative, by all means, please let me know, and I can certainly type out in the description drop down bar. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. A revised explanation. Where's Auntie Mimi? I don't know. I don't know, but clearly doesn't have her priorities right if she's not here watching. Okay. All right. So, okay. They poured Drano on Angel to kill the smell. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. All right. So Michael then went around telling people that he had killed Angel, but no one believed him because, as we have stated before, he was high on drugs. To be fair, even if they did believe him, nobody wanted to be the one to turn on Michael. So Michael then entered rehab. While there, the rumors of Michael murdering Angel were reported on in the Village Voice by Michael Musto. Although no names were used, it stated the details of the murder. Over the coming weeks, the Village Voice continued to report and make accusations about the murder of Angel Melendez. So, the police, they were not really concerned about the disappearance of a Colombian drug dealer. We see this right in other cases. Depending on the population of where the crime is occurring, some of the time, whomever the victim or victims may be, just fly under the radar or don't get as much police attention as they should, which is unfortunate. And this is what happened in this case. Through September, the police had still never even questioned Michael about the disappearance or murder. Instead, the police wanted to nail his partner, Peter Gayton, and they needed Michael to testify against him. So at this point, people began to believe that Michael would get away with this rumored crime. I mean, he has to date, so why not think that he will continue to get away with it? However, that all changed when a dismembered body was pulled from the Hudson River. In November 1996, the coroner reported the body was identified as known drug dealer Angel Melendez. Every rumor was confirmed by the appearance of Angel's body. Michael was now going to be suspect number one. He couldn't now say he had made it all up and that this was just a coincidence. That was not going to fly. So Michael, he fled New York and he held up in a hotel in New Jersey with his former boyfriend. The police located him and surrounded the hotel. Michael, he did surrender to police and he gave a full confession. However, he pled not guilty to the charge of first-degree murder. He felt he was attacked and only fought back, claiming self-defense. Michael's own attorneys were nervous because that of his strong drug use and the dismemberment of the body, they felt he would be found guilty. Now, late in 1997, Michael and accomplice Robert Riggs, again known as Freeze, pled guilty to manslaughter, a lesser charge, and were sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison for Angel Melendez's murder. In 2006, Michael became eligible for parole, but he was denied. While Michael was in prison, he stated, quote, "I know why I blabbed. I must have wanted to stop me. I was spinning out of control. It's like the old saying, what do you have to do to get attention around here? Kill somebody?" End quote. Well, that's quite a statement to make. While in prison, Michael attended therapy and became clean and sober. Before we continue with the rest of the story, let's see where you guys are in the chat. I think I missed a little bit, and I just want to make sure that gets acknowledged. Okay, Manson. I saw Manson Archives, and wrong channel. For your Manson needs, go over to the podcast Manson Saga discussion panel. So Michael admitted publicly he killed Angel, not in a way as to look what I'm getting away with, but to actually try and get someone to help him. And his former boyfriend was addicted to meth with James, and they fled to California. Thank you. James, you are too much. Your comments are just too much. You know what? If you were taller and you did ate Drano, you mean drank, that would make so much sense. It would just make so much sense. So much would become clear. Let's see. Corey, I feel you, hon. Feel you. Let's see. He did so much heroin in hopes would kill himself after killing Angel. That is a very powerful statement because that's also not uncommon with other cases that I've covered and other cases that I will cover, that there seems to be this, and it doesn't happen in every case, but there's a crime committed and then almost like either an act of, there's not that, maybe planning after the fact doesn't really happen that much. So then sometimes maybe it's just because the cases that I'm currently researching right now, it seems to be there'd be this, planned out murder and then not so much planning for after the fact, knowing they might get caught. And then typically I've been researching and reading a lot about more of like death by cop. It's almost like suicide by cop. They almost intended for that to happen, or it appeared as though they did. Not saying that this is 100% like that, but just kind of goes along with what I've been researching lately for some cases. So stay tuned for that. There's a lot to come. Let's see. He hopes it would have killed him and told Freeze he would have to clean up with 2 dead bodies. All right. So as I said, Michael attended therapy and he became clean and sober. So that must be where the story ends, right? If you know Danny After Dark shows, no, doesn't happen that easily. So May 5th, 2014, Michael was paroled from prison. February 2nd, 2017, Michael was arrested for trespassing and smoking crystal meth in Joyce Kilmer Park in Concourse outside the Bronx Superior Court at approximately 1:30 a.m. So not only to get caught doing that, but right near a Supreme Court location. Oh, goodness. December 24th, 2020. Michael died from an overdose of fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine. A friend had discovered Michael unconscious and unresponsive on his bed and called 911. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Police, they found 2 to 3 small bags of heroin and other empty bags near his body. Michael Alig was 54 years old. That is the case of Michael Alig. Do you guys have any other questions, comments about this case? Manson Archives, I'm looking at you. You are, again, I wish I knew this before I did this episode, so well knowledged in this case. So I just give you guys a brief overview of this case, but Manson Archives, again, me and him were messaging back and forth today, know so much detail about this case. So yes, if there's anything that I maybe missed or kind of brushed over that you think deserves a little bit more focus, by all means, let's chat about it for a little bit. So yeah, this was an interesting case. I have to say, I didn't know a lot, and it was a bit more refreshing to research, and hear me out as to why I say that, because it was such a different type of vibe of a case. And don't get me wrong, the death of Angel Melendez is horrific, absolutely horrific. Just the whole background of this and leading up to everything, it wasn't as doom and gloom as a lot of the other cases, most of the cases that I researched. So this was just such a different case to research. And it was easier. It was a lot easier, I do have to say. So Let's see. So did he do any time? Yes. Yes, he did. 17 years. Good question. Do you think that was a fair sentence? I think that can be answered very differently because I think it depends. It depends on your thought about this. I mean, we could ask Corey that question. We could certainly ask on any case. But what do you think, Corey? What do you think? I think for myself personally, I don't think 17 years is enough. I think, and yes, one could argue that he was on drugs at the time, so that may have twisted, was he in the right state of mind? Well, clearly not. But I also look at the actions after the fact and the, bragging to other people. I call it bragging, but I don't see remorse. I don't see a lot of remorse. So I don't think 17 years was enough for a life based on what was done to the victim, how he was disposed of, and how Michael carried himself after the fact. I think that was a light sentence personally. But that's just me. Michael, let's see, didn't get into drugs until he was becoming dark as a person. Peter gave Disco 2000 to Walt Cassidy, and that's when he spiraled into drugs. I knew Michael before the murder and after. I liked Michael afterwards, but 17 years isn't enough because he took a life. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah. So it seemed we both agree on that end, that 17 years wasn't enough. But I still find that fascinating that you knew Michael. I wish I knew that before today. It wasn't premeditated though, right? I want to hear what Manson Archives, how he answers that because he knew him before. But again, he was on drugs. I can't 100% answer that, whether it was yes, premeditated or not. I know that there was a long-standing drug debt, based on the research, and they had a fight, but I don't think, I'm just looking at the notes. 100% don't know. 100% don't know. But leaning more towards not premeditated. But I can't 100% answer that. What I was getting at, Danny. What were you getting at, Danny? Is it possible Alig probably snitched on a lot of people? He was well connected to the underground scene, wasn't he? That's an interesting point. I will say he was sincerely sorry and wanted to talk to the Melendez family, but wasn't allowed to speak to them. Yeah, that's one of the things we had talked about earlier. So thank you for bringing that up here, Manson Archives. No, it wasn't premeditated. There was much more to the story. A fight did happen over a drug debt. It just happened. Okay. He turned snitch to get a lesser sentence. Okay, and then Jinx, drug dealers get killed all the time. Doesn't it go with the territory? But that doesn't mean that Michael should have gotten no sentence, or, in my opinion, or as light a sentence as he did. But I get what you're saying. But I mean, I don't agree, but I get what you're saying. There are some professions, not just drug dealing, that do have higher risk for crimes to occur. And unfortunately, a lot of times, as we saw in this case, the police not fully investigating it the way they would for somebody who was maybe in a different profession or a different race, a different financial class. So yeah, that's not just unique to this case, unfortunately. I do want to say Robert, aka Freeze, has a legal decree now. Okay. Thank you for that. That I did not know. I didn't research too much on Freeze after this. I was mostly focused on Michael. So thank you for pointing that out. Manson Archives, what is the rest of the story? Is that well known? I really don't know much about the case. 17 years just seemed way too light of a sentence given the brutality that was involved. I completely agree, Corey. I know. Honestly, James, had I known before today when I posted it, that's one of the, I literally said to Manson Archives, I wish I knew this before. So sorry, folks. Maybe there'll be a part 2. Death by misadventure, premeditated or not. I don't fully agree with that statement. Manson Archives. So I'm just going to highlight everything Manson Archives says at this point. So Kane, Peter gave Disco 2000 to Michael, and Michael spiraled out of control. He was being evicted. His drug bill was astronomical. I can only imagine tensions were building up. I know you're furiously typing right now. While you do that, I'm just going to take a sip. And again, Boston Bruin shout out to my co-host Paul over at the podcast. Okay. Let's see. He had no electricity or water in his apartment. I meant wallpaper. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Which always happens in the drug world. Absolutely, Mr. Jenks. Absolutely. Okay. All right. While you guys are typing that up. Absolutely, Kane. I second that. Thank you, Manson Archives. Then it went straight to hell. Well said. Absolutely well said for that. Okay. All right. Do you guys have any other last minute questions or comments on the case, especially where we have Manson Archives in the chat for this to give a little bit more of a personal and insightful answer that maybe I can provide just based on the internet research that I did for this. So it's so interesting too, like, because you weren't, Manson Archives, you weren't the only one to comment that you personally had ties to this case. Paul Hart had commented on the post as well. I'm only saying it because it was, a public comment, that he had connections to this case as well. And I had no idea, absolutely no idea. So very interesting. It's very interesting when I do some of these cases and people then either message me or, privately or post that they had a personal tie to a case. Cause it's always fascinating. It's always fascinating because everybody knows somebody, right? So it's interesting when that happens. Let's see. Manson Archives said they had no running water, so Michael didn't get to bathe. He ended up buying Manic Panic hair color to cover the blood on his hands. Oh my God, Manic Panic. So growing up, there was one of the stores at the local mall was Hot Topic, and Hot Topic still exists. I don't know if it's where you guys are too, but they sold Manic Panic. So in high school, me and my friends would buy Manic Panic and dye our hair. But then I would get bored of that because it's just temporary stuff. I'm like temporary tattoo. No, I want the real stuff. So I would then transition to permanently dyeing my hair outrageous colors. But in high school for a long time, Manic Panic. Oh my God, Manson Archives. I totally see. Oh my God, Liz, I'm so happy you came in right now. Manic Panic. That brings me back. Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Just had a flashback. Oh my God. But putting that little side story, back to the side where it belongs. Yeah, that makes the red manic panic. I can totally remember that right now. And that makes, he ended up buying manic panic hair color to cover the blood on his hands. Wow, that is wild. And put it around the bite marks where Angel bit him. Ugh. Manson Archives, I wonder if his sentence would have been less if he had not dismembered him and called the police. Good question. Good question, Kane. For me, looking at the sentence, which again, I think is too light, I look at the actions after the fact. So let's see. Kane, in that area, probably not. Michael was the king of the club kids. He had connections to not only Limelight, Tunnels, Save the Robots, and Palladium. Yeah, I should have done a disclaimer, Mr. Jinx. My apologies. My apologies. I'm not sure if I can't even remember because the whole manic panic comment just like brought me way back. I suggest a disco ball next time, Paul. Paul. You know what? Unless there's a, you know what, next time I cover a case that is clearly a 1970s case, then I'll rock this top again. Other than that, no. All right. All right, I think that covered that. So if you guys have any other questions, or if you're watching this where it's not live, feel free to leave a comment on the video and I will gladly get back to you on that. Other than that, thank you guys for joining me for this episode of Danny After Dark, and huge shout out, thank you to Manson Archives. One, for just being the amazing kick-ass person that you are, and two, that for having so much extra knowledge about this case. So to answer anybody's questions in the chat, greatly, greatly appreciated. So I will be doing a True Crime and Chill later on this week. With it being Labor Day holiday weekend, I'm not sure when, but as soon as I kind of know my schedule, I will let you guys know. Most likely it will be on Thursday. I'm like 95% sure it'll be on Thursday, but I'll definitely keep you guys posted. So until next time, everybody, remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.